and so I looked at my sugar, and it was 77. And so I had a piece of candy and a bite of peanut butter, and I think it bumped it a little bit. So if I start talking about space and Martians and you know, like normal, you'll know that I'm kind of losing touch here. But we left off 2 weeks ago in Daniel chapter 9. So that's where we're going to be tonight, Daniel chapter 9. And we covered just one verse, verse 24. And if you want to have a very, it's not simple, but if you want a concise lineage of the tribulation and the really the not just the tribulation, but really what Daniel refers to as the 70 weeks. If you want a really good, clear indication of what that is, you look in Daniel chapter 9. We covered verse 24. Verse 24, if you'll remember, really focuses on Israel. And so we talked much about Israel, and I'm not going to reiterate that tonight because we covered a lot of ground there. But verse 24 really is Israel and God's covenant to reconnect with Israel in the tribulation. And he will reconnect with the children of Israel and the nation of Israel during the tribulation. We'll see many Jews come to faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. And so you're going to see a large number of Jews that will be saved during the tribulation. Now in verse 25, and that's where we'll pick up tonight, and I'm just going to give you an abbreviated, and I know Frankie just joked with me, you know, did they teach abbreviation in seminary for preachers? And the answer to that is no, they don't. And so I'm going to experiment tonight, okay? I'm going to just experiment a little bit tonight, see if I can knock this out for you in a few minutes. But to give you kind of a countdown, let's begin with verse 25. In verse 25 of Daniel chapter 9, it says, "Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublesome times." Now let's stop right there for a moment. What this is talking about here is it's talking about the rebuilding of Jerusalem during Nehemiah's day and Ezra's day. Okay, now that's the rebuilding of the temple. If you remember, the temple was destroyed in Jerusalem, and you remember when you read Nehemiah and Ezra, Nehemiah rebuilt the what? The walls. And then Ezra came after and rebuilt the city. And so during that time period, it was approximately that 7 weeks. And if you look in verse 25 where it says, "There shall be 7 weeks," that 7 weeks is basically 49 years. And a prophetic year is 360 days, by the way, not 365 as our modern calendars read 365 days, but in prophetic weeks they are 360. That's one of the reasons why a circle has how many degrees? 360. Yeah, and so the idea, so the prophetic calendar year is actually 360 days. And so that first week where it says there shall be 7 weeks speaks of the 49. 7 weeks times 7 is 49 is where you get that. You multiply that. And so And that's where you find it took those 49 years in the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, there in Nehemiah's day and in Ezra's day. All right, and so that's where you have that. Now, you go on, and basically the idea there is that from that you come to the 62 weeks. Now, the 62 weeks is an amount of time that is spelled out that if you take the 62 weeks plus that 1 week is how many weeks? 63 weeks. The 63 weeks turn out to be approximately 483 years. All right? In the 483 years, the prophecy is 490 years leading into the 70th week of the tribulation. And so what that means is this, and I'm giving you the Reader's Digest, okay? So Frankie's holding me to this tonight, all right? But what we're doing is you've got the remainder of that time from the time Ezra and Nehemiah rebuilt the walls in the city of Jerusalem, all right, from that time period till the time of the coming of Christ and the consummation of his death at Calvary. You have approximately that time period elapse. And so you get to, from the time that Jesus dies on the cross of Calvary, you have those 483 weeks, okay? Now, you say years that have elapsed. From the time of Jesus, according to Romans chapter 11, there is a time for the Gentiles. Now, many interpret that as being the time where the church is built and the church is developed. And so when Jesus goes to be with the Father, you have Pentecost, and Pentecost takes place, and Peter preaches at Pentecost, and 3,000 are saved there at Pentecost, and that's the beginning of the New Testament church. And we are in that dispensation or time period. A dispensation is a time period. And we are in that dispensation of what they call the dispensation of grace. The dispensation of grace. That's where the gospel is proclaimed around the world through the working of what? The church. Through the working of the church. And so that's where we find ourselves right now. We are in the, when you add that together, it comes to be 69 weeks, or those 483 years, okay? Now, I wish I had time. I'd love to have something on the boards here where I could show you and do the math. It's phenomenal to see, and how it works is phenomenal. But trust me, it spells out clearly in this time period. But there is a parenthesis in the calendar, or there is a parenthesis in the running of this 70 weeks, or these 490 years. All right, we're at 483. There's 1 week left. All right, there is 1 week left. That's the 70th week. And that 1 week, the 70th week, is known as what? The tribulation period. The tribulation period. And the tribulation period will last how long? 7 years. 7 years. All right, so it's 7 years. 7 years equals a week. All right, for the 70 weeks. All right, so right now we are in the dispensation of grace. We're in a grace period where God's message is being preached, Jesus is being preached, and the church is growing and advancing, and people are coming to faith in Jesus Christ. But when you read Matthew 24 and 25, and what we'll read in a moment here in Daniel, you'll see that we are coming to a closure of that period. And at the closure of that period, there is going to be a desolation that's going to begin to take place. And what's happening now is that if you read in Matthew 24, you see the preamble there where the world is becoming more harsh, more wicked, more vile, more detestable. Just this past week, I mean, look at what we've seen just, at Brown University and there in Australia, those Jews on the beach celebrating Hanukkah and being murdered. And it just goes on and on, just the heinous wickedness in our society. And it's just growing by leaps and bounds. It doesn't catch us by surprise anymore, does it? Really, think about it. Now we turn the news on and we hear where somebody guns down some people in a shopping center or in a home or somewhere, and the sad thing is it's happening so much that we've grown accustomed to it. We've even grown a little, I don't want to say cold, because I know it still bothers us, and it bothers me. I know it bothers you, but there has become kind of a lethargic kind of complacency where it just happens, and we read about it, and then we just kind of read it and choom, and it's gone, and we go on in our daily lives, and that's what's taking place. So now, let's go back to verse 26, okay? In verse 26 it says, of Daniel chapter 9, it says, and after the 62 weeks, okay, the 62 weeks, all right, Messiah shall be cut off. Messiah shall be cut off. All right, that is that period of time that we talked about. There's that 1 week, all right? Remember the 1 week there in verse 25? It says, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. All right, do you see that? What that means is when you add that together and that comes together, it totals that 483 years. All right, from the time the temple was rebuilt in Jerusalem to the time Jesus died. All right, and then the church age came, and then at the closure of the church age, there's going to be what? The rapture of the church. There's going to be the rapture of the church. We're coming close to the rapture of the church, and when the rapture of the church comes, we're going to see that immediately the Antichrist is going to come visibly announced on the scene. All right? Because at that time, the 70th week, or the 484th year to 90, will begin to tick away. Does that make sense? It'll begin to tick away. All right? And so that's what's happening right now. And in verse number 26, it says, and after the 62 weeks plus the other week, which is 63 weeks, or 483 years, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. All right? But look what it says. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end of it shall be with a flood until the end of the war. Desolations are determined. Who is the prince that is to come? The Antichrist. Yeah, the Antichrist. The Antichrist. He's speaking here of the Antichrist who is to come. What's happened here in the first 3.5 years of the tribulation period, which is 7 years, okay, during that time period, that 1 week, 7 years, all right, during the first 3.5 years, the Antichrist develops a peace treaty with Israel, all right? And that peace treaty is going to be established in Israel. Israel's going to have all peace, and there's going to be the rebuilding of the temple once again. But after that time period, notice that it says, shall destroy the city and the what? Sanctuary. All right? So what's going to happen is the Antichrist is going to come, spend 3.5 years of peace on earth, only to set up residence in the temple, because the Jews are going to be celebrating who? Jesus. The what?
The mosque, the Islamic mosque, is on the Temple Mount now.
Yes.
Is that the one that's going to be destroyed?
No, the new temple. The new temple. The new temple. There'll be a new rebuilding of the temple, not the mosque, but that will be destroyed. But there will be a temple that will be built from scratch. Yeah, it'll be a temple that is built from scratch. I'm told that there are plans to it now.
They already have the materials.
That's what I understand. Yes, that's what I understand. The plans are there, but the construction has not started yet. But the plans are there, so they're close. But that's good. That's very good, Peggy. That's good to know. But anyway, so let's go back to this just for a moment. In verse 27, then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. All right? That's the Antichrist. Remember, we're in the last week, the 70th week, okay? You remember that? We've got 483 weeks that have elapsed since the time the temple was rebuilt by Nehemiah and Ezra, and then it's destroyed. All right, the Antichrist destroys it. All right, and then he says in verse 27, then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week, all right, which is how many years? 3.5. 3.5. He shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. Sacrifice and offering will be sacrifice and offering that the Jews will offer to the glory of God in the glory of Jesus. Okay, and they'll be bringing these sacrifices into the altar at the temple, and we'll see that take place. We won't see it take place. We'll be in heaven, but it will take place. But in the middle of the week, he shall bring an end to the sacrifice and offering. The reason being is the Antichrist isn't being worshipped, and the Antichrist is none other than who? He is Satan's spawn. And so the one thing that Satan wants above everything else is to be what? Worshipped. And so his son will be the same way, and he'll wish to be worshipped as well. And so you'll see that take place. And then it says, and on the wing of abomination shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolation. You say, what in the world does all that mean? That is the final battle of Armageddon. That is Armageddon there. That is where that there'll be complete annihilation. The consummation, Jesus spoke it into existence, the world into existence in Genesis 1:1. It was spoke into existence, and with one word, at the desolation, at the battle of Armageddon, in the valley of Mageddon, there will be one word Jesus will speak. Now, will there be napalm and rockets and missiles and jets, and will there be all that? I don't know how it's going to come to a cataclysmic end the way it will come to an end, but I do know this. I do know that Jesus is going to speak a word, and we're going to be with him, and he will speak a word, and that'll be it. And the final destruction and annihilation that this world that we presently live on will be completely destroyed. Will be completely destroyed.
You have all of the materials, the jets and everything stored underneath that valley.
There is word of that, yes. Yes. Yeah, there is word of that. There sure is. Yeah. You got to remember that when we studied and when we started to study a few weeks ago and a few months ago in the Revelation, if you remember when we got to chapters 6, 7, 8 up through 14, 15, 16, where you get into the judgments, okay, and all those judgments and how they happen and what happens there, John only sees and interprets based upon his time period. If you were to go back 200 years ago and show a picture of a stealth bomber, you wouldn't have a clue what that was. You wouldn't have a clue. All right? And so when John says he sees winged creatures and flying creatures, and he sees these things taking place, it's just in his mind what he perceives. So could it be that there will be a cataclysmic final world war that will take place where bombs and nuclear and all that will break loose? Well, probably so. Probably so, because the whole world is going to be what? Annihilated. The whole world will be annihilated. Now, what happens after that? Well, when you get into the Revelation, after that period of time, the annihilation, then there will be a period of time called the 1,000-year millennial. And the 1,000-year millennial is where all the saved will spend approximately 1,000 years. Now, the 1,000 years, again, the time period, will it be a chronological 1,000 years like we set our calendar? We don't know for certain about that. All right. When you look at prophetic years, remember a prophetic year is how many days? 360. All right. And so is it speaking of prophetic years? Is it speaking of calendar years based on our calendar that we have set? After the death of Christ and between BC and AD and the calendar that's been set. But and then after that period of time of the 1,000-year millennial that will take place, then there'll be a short period of time where Satan, who has been bound and demons have been bound for that 1,000 years, will be released. And during that time period, there will be a short period of time, and it's a short period. It's not a long period. All right, it will be relatively short, but there will be a time where there will be, believe it or not, it's hard to believe after a 1,000-year millennial, but even after that, there'll be a time period where there'll be some who will defect. There'll be some who will alienate. There'll be some who will withdraw. And so after that, there will be those who will follow after Satan in his being. But coming after the 1,000-year millennial, in that short period of time where Satan is released to create havoc, for that short period of time comes the what? The final judgment. The final judgment. And that's where ultimately that final judgment will take place, where it is what we call the great white throne judgment. We will go through what is called a bema seat judgment. Paul talked about it in the Corinthian letter, the bema seat judgment. And that's a judgment not on our salvation. All right, that's a judgment upon our works, our labor in the Lord, and so in our testimony, and so we will. But it's not a matter of will one lose their salvation, all right, at the bema seat, okay? But it's not one that will lose his salvation or her salvation, but it is basically a judgment of receiving what? Rewards, crowns, all right? And then the crowns will be ultimately laid where? At the feet of Jesus. At the feet of Jesus, yeah. So, now we covered that in 27 minutes. That's pretty good, Frankie. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. All right, we could have gone a little longer with that, but listen, you want to know what's going to happen in these last days, look to Israel. Look to Israel. I guarantee you, the United States, there's literally nothing said about the United States. I don't know what's going to happen to us, but I know that we are, as a nation under God, and many in this nation will be raptured home and taken home. But this nation will be destroyed, and it'll be caught up in the warfare that will take place. Okay. Well, that's it in a nutshell. I wish we could have had more time to break loose, but if you twist his arm hard enough, maybe the new pastor will come in and you can get him to start at chapter 14 of Revelation, where we kind of left off a little bit, and he can carry you the rest of the way through on Wednesday nights, and because we got past chapter 14. Where did we get to? Chapter 15, 16, I think. And so we got a pretty good ways, but you'll be able to work that a little better. Do we have prayer concerns tonight? We didn't know if we had them tonight. Martha Gale had her surgery. She did well. She got through the surgery, and it looks like she'll be coming home tomorrow. That's based on doctors' approval and that kind of thing, how she does tonight. But she did get through a very serious surgery today, and so we rejoice with that. Anyone else, a prayer concern or anything that we can close in prayer tonight? We'll wrap up a little early tonight. And got a praise?
Got a shoe on my right foot.
Got a shoe and no cast. And no cast. And we were all used to the purple cast, so all but you. Yeah, all but you. So we praise that. That's good. Good praise report tonight. All right. Anyone else?
My college roommate had open heart surgery today. I'd like to remember her.
Okay. College roommate? Okay. All right. Anyone else?
I need to remember Sierra.
Yeah, Sierra, how is her foot?
She's
Doing good. Doing good with her surgery, okay. All right, good. All right. Well, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this day. And Lord, as we wrap up tonight, Lord, there's so much. Lord, so much to cover. So much is happening, and it's happening so fast.